Hi everyone, happy to say this is our last learning outcome of Module 1. Learning outcome number 9, we're going to be covering the pineal gland. Recall that the hypothalamus is part of the diencephalon of the brain together with the thalamus. And we can see both of them here on this image. We can also see the pituitary gland, which we have covered already extensively. The hypothalamus sits inferior and also somewhat anterior to the thalamus, as we can see from this image. Also from this image, we can see that the inferior but somewhat posterior to the thalamus is where we will find the pineal gland, which is this tiny endocrine gland shaped like a pine cone and whose functions are not yet entirely clear. We know that it is an endocrine gland and its endocrine cells, which are called pinealocytes, are arranged in both spherical clusters and branching cords. And within the adult pineal gland, we can find dense deposition of calcium particles that will lie in between these cell clusters, and they will form what is known as the pineal sand or the brain sand. And this concentration of calcium particles makes it easy to pinpoint the location of the pineal gland in X-rays, as we can see from this image over here. The pinealocytes that make up the pineal gland are known to produce and secrete the amino hormone known as melatonin, which is going to be derived from serotonin. Now, do not get melatonin confused with melanin. For me, I just remembered that melanocytes secrete melanin. By breaking down the word, it makes it easier. So cytes are cells, and then you're left with melano, which produces melanin. But it can be very confusing, so make sure that you pay attention to this. With regards to melatonin functions, we can say that the secretion of melatonin will vary according to the level of light that's received from the environment, and this may influence the body's circadian rhythms, which are the dark light fluctuations that affect not only sleepiness but also wakefulness. In addition, it will also affect appetite and body temperature. We already talked about another hormone that might influence the circadian rhythm. Remember? If you thought of aldosterone, you are actually not correct, because aldosterone is secreted by the adrenal gland, but the one that will affect the circadian rhythm is another hormone that is secreted by the adrenal gland, and this would be cortisol. So if you thought of cortisol, you are correct. And when photons of light, they stimulate the retinas of the eye, there's going to be a nerve impulse that is sent to a region of the hypothalamus that's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, which is important in regulating the biological rhythms. This suprachiasmatic nucleus can be seen on this image right over here. Notice how it sits posterior to the optic chiasm, which is the location where the optic nerves coming from the right and left eye will merge. So from the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the nerve signal is going to be carried to the sympathetic neurons of the spinal cord, and then eventually to the pineal gland, where the production of melatonin is going to be inhibited. As a result, blood levels of melatonin fall, and this promotes wakefulness. In contrast, as the light levels decline, such as during the evening, melatonin production increases, and this causes the opposite, which is drowsiness. Now, interestingly, children, they do have higher melatonin levels than adults, which may prevent the release of gonadotropin from the anterior pituitary, and this will inhibit the onset of puberty. In other words, melatonin will be inhibiting the production of hypothalamic releasing factors that stimulate the secretion of follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH, and luteinizing hormone, LH, which will act on the gonads, therefore the testes for males and the ovaries for females. This might also be one of the reasons why adolescents they do have a tendency of wanting to sleep longer hours since there is an increase in melatonin production that causes drowsiness. Let's also talk about, for example, jet lag. So it occurs when a person travels across several time zones and feels very sleepy during the day and they feel wakeful at night. And traveling across multiple time zones significantly will disturb the light dark cycle that's regulated by melatonin. And it can take up to several days for melatonin synthesis to be adjusted to the light dark patterns in this new environment that you're in, resulting in this term that we call jet lag. Now, they say that if the difference in the time zone is, let's say, for example, 6 hours, that it will take you 6 days to adjust your circadian rhythm. Therefore, 1 day for each hour difference. And for this reason, some air travelers, they take melatonin supplements to induce sleep. However, this should not be a long-term fix because this continuous use of melatonin supplement might cause your pineal gland to become lazy and then it will stop producing melatonin. So just make sure that you keep this in mind if you're taking melatonin supplements. Finally, there is a new line of research that shows that melatonin might have an antioxidant property by increasing the efficiency of mitochondrial oxidative phosphorylation and reducing electron leakage and thereby lowering the free radical generation. Now, free radicals, they are compounds that can cause harm if their levels become too high in your body. And this is why everyone says that it is very important to get enough sleep every night, that it makes you younger. And it may be that it's due to these antioxidant properties. Therefore, just make sure to plan your days accordingly and include in them at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and you will look young and healthy.